Rogues have always been one of the strongest classes in World of Warcraft Classic, doing incredible damage in raids, usually only falling behind warriors, and also proving as one of the strongest and most iconic PvP classes in the entire game. I mean, this channel even literally started out as a rogue specific guide channel, where I was making guides on WoW Classic on how to min-max the class. Therefore, I'm really excited to cover everything you need to know about rogues in Season of Discovery. Right now, it's just to level 25, so we're gonna talk about everything you need to know for both PvP, but as well as for PvE. Rogues finally have some actual variants to the specs they can run, where you can be both daggers having two different specs, being Mutilate or Backstab daggers, or you can be a normal combat build for PvE. And at level 25, all three of these specializations are really useful. They will all be very close in damage, so you're gonna be able to choose from whatever you prefer. So with that being said, let's dive right into everything you need to know about rogues. First of all, huge shout out to our boy Simon Eyes, who's already working on a rogue sim. It's already out. If you go to his Discord channel, you can already see one of the first versions of the rogue simulations, so we can actually see how powerful each of the specs are. It's not just pure theory crafting, and quite literally almost everything I thought about or had recorded this video last week and not edited all came exactly true. So rogues are going to be very strong in single target DPS, with their PvE specializations being 3 different specs. So let's look at all of those in particular, and then let's break down the runes you might need to look at if you were going to be PvPing, as well as what you might want to look at if you were tanking. The first one we have here is going to be the saber slash or sword spec, as well as this is the same thing, it's going to be the mace spec if you're using something like BiS's Basher. The talents you're going to use for this are to get improved Sinister Strike right away. This is the first thing you're going for. And then you go down, get 5% crit. And then for the raids, you will get Murder, Ruthlessness, get 1 point into Relentless Strikes. This thing is just always amazing. If you're just leveling, you might grab 2 points into Remorseless Attacks, as you like to do that. And then 3 points down in Lethality. This specialization will be stronger than going into Precision for the extra hit. And for the sword or mace spec, basically the normal combat rogues, you're gonna use a saber slash as one of your abilities, but your finisher is gonna be Envenom. You're not using Eviscerate anymore, you are using Envenom. That means we are grabbing Deadly Brew, which is one of the chest runes, and what this does basically means whenever you hit something with a normal poison, basically you'll have instant poison in your main hand, then you will also inflict deadly poison on them, having a dot tick on them. That allows you then to use Envenom as your finisher, although if they don't have very many stacks just yet, like right at the beginning of the fight, you might end up using one Eviscerate, but Envenom is pretty much going to be your finisher in this rotation. Then Saber Slash, it hits decently hard. You can weave this in to actually add a dot to your target, although technically that might be a tiny DPS loss. Saber Slash is a glove rune that hits for 130% of your damage, and it adds a bleed onto the target. It also stacks that bleed up to 3 times, and it gives you 1 combo point. It's also affected by any talents that affect Sinister Strike, so getting 5 less energy on Sinister Strike also applies to getting 5 less energy on Saber Slash. And it's actually pretty interesting that as a PvE rogue, and we'll talk about PvP at the end, Saber Slash or anything else actually in this glove slot is not necessarily too important. You don't really need to grab Saber Slash because you could actually just be spamming Sinister Strike, just like an old school rogue used to do, and just replace Eviscerate with Envenom. Make sure you also try to use Slice and Dice quite often, but let's look at the gear. This is going to be the actual full BiS gear that I'm showing you guys right here, and then I will show you kind of a more optimal setup that most people will have. So what I would run with, and I can't actually sim the weapons from the Warsong Gulch, which would be Protector's Sword in the main hand, and then you could get the dagger in the offhand, Sentinel's Blade, but your offhand can easily just be Cruel Barb, and most people before you get the Protector's Sword might be running BiS's Basher. Now, technically, I think that Protector Sword is going to be better when we are able to actually simulate that. Now, you might notice a lot of these items are different than what you might be seeing on some other BiS lists. That is because the actual best damage for you as a rogue for pretty much every single build is going to be getting the highest level green weapon with attack power on it. So Durable Belt of Power, Pathfinder Gloves of Power, Pathfinder foot pads of power. These are all going to be your actual full BiS for PvE situations if you want to increase your DPS. And I know there's a ton of people out there that just absolutely love to get the full BiS. No matter how little bit of damage they get from it, this is what you'll run. So I wanted to show this on one of the builds, then I'll show you what you'll most likely be running on the next build. The hardest thing that you could find too would be something like this spectral necklace, which is going to be something that is of the monkey. So it's 4 agility, 4 strength. That's another thing, but everything of power or of agility or of the monkey. There's really good alternatives for everything, and we'll talk about those in a second. Now to switch over to the Mutilate build, if you're going to be using daggers, all you need to change from your runes is going to be changing your glove rune from Saber Slash over to Mutilate. Now your actual normal combo point builder will be Mutilate. You won't use Backstab or Sinister Strike. You will always be using Mutilate, and then your finisher is going to be Envenom. For this build, you are also getting Deadly Brew, so you're putting instant poison in both your main and offhand. I forgot to mention, for the other build, you will actually use instant poison in your main hand and use one of the new BFD sharpening stones for 2% hit in your offhand. But for the Mutilate build, you are going 5 points into your subtlety tree to grab opportunity. This is going to give you 20% extra damage onto Mutilate because it's affected by everything that also affects Backstab. What Mutilate does is it hits with both of your weapons. That's why it's actually kind of nice to have slow daggers, because both of them hit at one time and it'll hit pretty hard. Now, you also then go into the assassination tree to grab 5% crit, and then you go down also into ruthlessness, murder, and relentless strikes one more time. So whenever you get to use Envenom, then you have a chance to get a combo point back or also get a little bit extra energy back. This is just going to be really useful for you. You are going to be using Envenom as your finisher, as well as using Slice and Dice as your secondary finisher again. This build will actually show you kind of what the traditional BiS list is gonna look like. Something like Void Touch leather gloves, which even on the last spec, you should probably run Void Touch leather gloves. It just gives you a actual raid-wide CD, which gives you 10% haste. These things are ridiculous. Wildborn Belt is from a quest, very easy to get. I don't think we'll be able to access Trip Runner dungarees, which means you'll get something like Trollbane. If I just open this up, you'll get something like Trollbane leggings or Petrospill leggings if you can. But if you can do Rig Wars quest in Nomer, but it might be a raid, so we don't know. Then you will have Meteor Shard as well as Sentinel's Blade. This is from PvP. Jurassic Wrist Guards, these are gonna drop all the time. These are just 5 agility, 2 strength. Tunic of Westfall, if you're Alliance, this is gonna be really easy to get. It's just from Dead Mines. Parachute Cloak again. Forest Tracker and Mantle of Thieves are very similar on how much damage they do, although Forest Tracker is a little bit better. High Tide Choker was from the raid, so you'll actually go with Sentinel's Medallion from PvP, and then you'll get Humbert's Helm, or Humbertel's Helm. And I do have to say, after testing out all of the builds, I personally am a huge fan of this last build. I think the Backstab build is the most fun, and slightly from the simulations I've ran, it has the highest DPS potential. Just literally ever so slightly though. They're almost all exactly the same, but it feels like you're getting a lot more out of playing the class if you're running the Backstab build. The main rune you get here, and this is going to be the one rune that changes everything for you. This is the only one that matters. That is going to be Slaughter from the shadows in your chest piece. This reduces the energy cost of your Backstab and ambush by 20 energy. This is absolutely insane. It does not affect Mutilate, but Backstab does almost the damage of Mutilate, and you're getting it off so much more often. Instead of a 60 energy Backstab, now you have a 40 energy Backstab. That's literally 33% of the energy used on one ability, your main ability. So now you are going to be casting Backstab significantly more often. And from the simulations, my highest DPS output from this is to go into combat so you can get improved Backstab. You're casting it all the time, so having 30% increased crit is amazing. Then you want to go down into opportunity and have 20% extra damage from it. And you might notice that I have Envenom here. Well, you don't even really need to use Envenom. You can kind of have anything here. You can be semi-spec'd for PvP. You can grab between the eyes to have a actual ranged stun. This is a ranged kidney shot, and then you can grab Shadow Strike because this is pretty much like a shadow step. You'll teleport behind the target and hit them with pretty much an ambush. And I say it doesn't really matter what's in your leg and hand rune because it literally doesn't. None of these actually are going to increase your DPS, so it's whatever you choose for your own playstyle. And that's because Slaughter from the Shadows is so strong that it can outshine all of the other runes just by itself. This is the best rune that we get for rogues for DPS specifically. And with that, there's nothing else that really complements it just yet. So just know nothing else is helping you get more damage here. Even with Envenom, that means you have to run a deadly poison because you don't have deadly brew. So you might even not need Envenom because you literally wouldn't be able to use it. Your finisher most of the time here is going to be Rupture. And when it's not Rupture, you can hit with Eviscerate because you don't really have Envenom. So what I would grab is personally Between the Eyes and Shadow Strike, but it doesn't matter. This spec feels the best. It really, really feels the best as a rogue player from Classic, as a top world rogue player from Classic. This is the spec that feels very reminiscent of Classic Rogue, but also feels really, really powerful. And that's even only at level 25. So personally, Backstab is my favorite choice, but if you want to run any of the other specs, you definitely can. All of them are very good in PvE. Now, quickly, let me break down some of the runes that are really good for you in PvP as well as what the tanking runes are. If you haven't seen my tank guide, that already breaks down literally all of the tanks, what specs you're going to run and everything like that. But let's just look at the runes. So first of all, every single slot has a tank rune, and the first one for you is just a flesh rune. This reduces your physical damage taken by 20%, while you have Blade Dance up, which is basically like a slice and dice that increases your parry. This rune also makes you crit immune as well as gives you a taunt. Your feint turns into a tease, so that's pretty much a taunt. But for PvP, we have Quick Draw, and what this is instead of using something like a Sinister Strike, you have a ranged attack that also builds a combo point, but it slows the target by 50% for 6 seconds, and it's modified by any of the talents that affect Sinister Strike. One of the things though that rogues are missing right now, crucially at this level, is Stun Lock. You don't have Cheap Shot or Kidney Shot, but instead we have Between the Eyes, which is literally a ranged kidney shot. That's what it is. It's a ranged kidney shot. This is crazy, and it's gonna be very fun in open world PvP or in normal PvP because gap closers are something that rogues are missing. Your other rune is Blade Dance. Like I mentioned, that is a slice and dice that will increase your parry. And then in the last slot, we have a Shiv, which instantly hits with your offhand and puts that poison there. So if you have something like mind numbing or crippling poison, you can instantly hit with it. Shadow Strike, which is a gap closer only usable out of combat because you have to be stealth. You'll teleport behind the target and hit them for 150% of your weapon damage. Saber Slash is the one we mentioned earlier. This adds a bleed to your target and it hits for 130% weapon damage. Mutilate, obviously, and Main Gouche. And actually, I'm pretty sure I found out it's pronounced Mangouche, whatever. This hits with your offhand and gives you 10% parry for a while. So those are all of the runes that rogues have. They're going to be an extremely versatile class, having 3 specs that are completely viable right now. Purely ranged DPS rogue is not a viable spec yet, but these specs are very good and they all complement each other and feel very reminiscent of World of Warcraft Classic Rogue. Rogues are going to be very good in PvE. I would wager that they are middle of the pack probably for PvP, and that's because there's some classes that are going to be so ridiculous, namely things like warlocks and hunters. In PvP, they just have everything for their build is amazing, and rogues are missing a few things in their kit that really bring them online just yet. Although just wait for the future because rogues are going to scale extremely well. I'm gonna be playing a rogue myself as one of my classes, so if you want to watch that, of course, come hang out with me on Twitch. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments, or if you want me to do this for any of the other classes. If you haven't checked out the other ones I've done, maybe there's a thing there, but of course make sure to like and subscribe to the channel because I will be covering every single DPS class moving into Season of Discovery and trying to tell you how to play all of them. Thanks for watching, everybody, and shout out to all the YouTube members that have shown support to the channel to allow me to continue making these videos. Have a good Thanksgiving, and I'll see you all in Season of Discovery.